it seems like that the lenses that had flipped the image, the mind had reflipped it in such a way to not operate normally. And this is huge. Kuhn goes on to conclude from this that there is no such thing, and quote, that the simulation of a previously analogous visual field has reacted upon and changed the field of vision itself, that your mind has altered your visual field. Literally as well as metaphorically, the man accustomed to inverted lenses has undergone a revolutionary transformation of vision. Paradigm shift. What this means is that when I look at the world, I no longer see the world as it is. I interpret the world. No such thing as naked sight. Everyone clothes their visual field through a particular paradigm or interpretive scheme. We no longer merely see the world, but we perceive the world. And Kuhn went on to argue that prior to the, let's say, the critical age or post-Kantian age, that, let's say, during the Enlightenment period, the understanding of science was that the scientists came to the data, and you had the scientists and the data, and the formulation of theory to account for the data. Right? Scientists, the data, and that's it. The prototype of the scientist would be Mr. Spock, right? Unbiased, no emotions to be obstacles against. The scientist is the individual in the lab, the white coat that only allows the data to affect. In fact, the two primary metaphors for understanding reality was the mirror, heavily used on the Enlightenment period. The mind reflects the order that is in nature as is, and then wax. So Aristotle says that the mind is like a wax, the form, through the visual, mainly through the visual, would impress itself upon the mind, so that in both metaphors, the mind is passive. What Kuhn is arguing is that the mind is active. The two individuals can come to the same set of data and come away with two different truth claims because the data is dressed according to their particular frame of reference or paradigm or what you would call worldview. Your worldview guides and in many ways determines what you see. Let me try to bring it home just slightly. So when you open the Bible, do you read it or do you interpret it? Everyone sees the same words on the text if you're using the same version. But is your mind like a mirror or a wax in which the meaning referenced by the text is impressed upon your mind? Or do you need to interpret the text, the same words, but the interpretation of the meaning referenced by the text is something that you actively must construct? That's a huge issue, because you can have the same text, but two individuals read it differently, because it's not an issue of reading or seeing, but it is an issue of interpretation or / perceiving. That has been a huge obstacle to theology. So that in the last 20, 30 years, theology has been reduced to hermeneutics. How do we access the text? I believe the Bible is from God. But how do I interpret the meaning in such a way that I understand the thoughts of God? It's the same issue. Just think of nature as a text. How am I doing? How much time do I have left? Literally, I will stop when you say 30 minutes. I'm going to walk off the stage and go home. I have kids waiting for me on a Friday. You said 9 minutes? Oh man, time goes by fast. 21 minutes, thank you. Let me know, seriously. But on the flip side, just hang with me for a little bit. I mean, even if you disagree, I teach philosophy at Moody Bible Institute. I'm not here to say things that you agree with, but to say things of which will make you think. That's my goal. And so what does this have to do with faith and science, reason, and theology? Well, take a look at the sheet that I handed out. I'll go through this briefly. But there are 4 possible relationships, and this is my taxonomy have my categories. Others have 3, others have 4. I've seen as many as 9, but I only have 30 minutes, so I'll go with 4. And let's start from the left side. This is the conflict model. In this model, and this would be one extreme, theology and science make assertions concerning the same realm of reality. That the scriptures make statements about things of which science can make the same kinds of statements about. So that if the object of these statements overlap, then there's possibility of conflict between these statements. And so the 2 primary ones that are always given in literature, one, Galileo, right? Galileo, by refining the telescope, discovered the moons of Jupiter rotating around Jupiter. So you have the first empirical evidence that the Earth is not the center of the universe, that everything revolves around. And as you have heard in one form or another, the conflict that arose with mainly the Catholic Church. And part of the assertion that the Bible teaches that the Earth is the center. Now, there's not just science and Bible. There's a lot of politics that's involved, Aristotelian interpretations of Scripture, but it's been framed as Scripture against science. Because the assumption is that science can make claims about the same realm of entity of which theology can, right? Same realm, possibility of overlap. The second one is the age of the Earth, right? So there are certain Christian groups who believe that the age of the Earth is somewhere between 10 to 100,000 years. Certainly a lot younger than what science claims to be, around 4.5 billion years. Once again, possibility of conflict because the assumption that scriptures can make empirical assertions about the observable world where science also makes. And then from the theological side, the Bible should be read literally in all of its assertions, including statements concerning the nature and operation of the universe, right? Empirical statements. And then from a science side, this will be Daniel Dennett and Richard Dawkins and others, science is free to draw inferences concerning the meaning of life, the existence of God, and the nature of evidence. So one of the texts that's most recent is Victor Stringer, who argues, in his earlier books, he argued, look, all the scientific evidence that Christians point to for substantiating belief in God, it really doesn't work. But in fact, not only does science not argue for God, but science can demonstrate that God does not exist. So he's stepping into the theological realm here. This is a conflict model from a, let's say, atheist or naturalistic side.